So thank you all for attending today's webinar. This is for the I-94 project, specifically our LAC GAC members. The purpose of this webinar today, we heard some feedback at our last LAC GAC meeting. There's desire for us to give a little bit more detailed overview of what the proposed improvements are for I-94. So we're going to take a look, a little more detail at the 2005 design, where we're at today with the proposed modifications. We'll discuss next steps, and then we'll host a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. Just to go over introductions again, the project team. Gary Stepansky is MDOT Senior Project Manager leading the I-94 study. His Deputy Project Managers, Kerry Warren, Adam Penzenstadler as well, and then Rob Morosi with MDOT Communications, and Noblet leading in the environmental portion from MDOT's side. On the owner's rep consultant team, we have Matt Simon, Tom Weston, Nate Ford, Baldoff, myself, Tony White, and Elra Austell. A couple other folks that are on the line as well, and we'll introduce those folks during the Q&A if questions come up. Just to go over some webinar logistics, want to keep your phone or computer on mute. I went through and tried to mute everybody, but you can come off mute. Make sure you monitor that so we don't get any noise or feedback throughout the webinar. Like I said, we're going to host a Q&A session at the end of the presentation, and the way that we're going to handle this is we'd like you to submit your questions via the chat function on the WebEx. So if you don't chat box open on your WebEx, if you go to the upper right corner of your WebEx screen, there's a chat icon. If it's not highlighted in blue, go ahead and click that. That should bring the chat box in the lower right corner. Sounds like we're getting some noise, getting some comments about noise. So here, it doesn't look like anybody's crumbling papers, but I'll check and see. Hold on. Yeah, that's what I'm doing. Putting everybody on mute here. All right. Hopefully that solved the noise problem. So again, if you want to submit questions throughout the presentation, submit them via the chat function. It should be, again, blue icon in the upper right corner. Click that. It should bring up a chat box, right-hand side of the screen. You can send the questions to everybody or to me. And then at the end of the presentation, we'll go through and go through the questions one by one. So again, just a project overview. This is I-94 project. One other thing to note, this presentation is being recorded. That way we'll be able to, or folks will be able to view this presentation on their own in more detail who aren't able to attend today, or if you yourself would like to back and review it in the future, you'll be able to do so. So the I-94 project runs from I-96 on the east, or on the west, to Cobb Avenue on the east, about a 6.7-mile corridor. This corridor was built, designed and built back in the late 1940s, early 1950s. It's reaching its useful life, and we're at a point where it needs to be improved. Today, there's existing 3 lanes in each direction. The corridor experiences congestion throughout the day. There are a number of outdated interchanges in the corridor. Inadequate ramps don't provide enough merge just for vehicles entering and exit the freeway. There's outdated interchange at M10 with left-handed entrances and exits. So look to modernize the corridor. There are 6-7 bridges throughout the corridor. A couple of them have been updated to date, only to address the condition of those bridges. They needed to be advanced ahead of the corridor improvements. Those at Trumbull, Woodward, and Van Dyke. There are a series of other bridges shown on the screen in blue and red that are also identified to be advanced ahead of the corridor improvements due to their condition.
Okay.
At some of the bridges that have been completed to date, first one being Van Dyke. As you can see, these bridges have been set up to set the abutments back so that the future improvements when they come through, these bridges will accommodate those future improvements. You can see in some of the aesthetic features of the bridge. The abutments or the walls are set up to have a constellation pattern, a little aesthetics than you see out there today. And then the piers have the barrel arch design, some aesthetic fencing and lighting as well. Again, these advanced bridges are being set up to accommodate the future improvements when they are constructed. So look at the existing corridor. The existing corridor has 3 lanes in each direction, as you all are aware. There's inadequate shoulders throughout the corridor today. The inside shoulder is not wide enough to accommodate vehicles for refuge, which creates some safety and operational issues. There's some service drives throughout the corridor, not consistent. They're at select locations. So move towards the 2005 design, which included adding 1 additional lane in each direction to improve traffic flow and safety along the corridor from I-96 to Connor. Also providing shoulders consistently throughout the corridor. So with the 2005 design, it'd be consistent 12-foot shoulders on the outside and 14-foot shoulders on the inside throughout the corridor. This will help improve safety, provide additional space for disabled vehicles, incident management. These improvements can be accommodated within the existing footprint of I-94. So one of some of the feedback we've been hearing is there's a misconception that in order to provide the additional lane in wide shoulders, it's going to necessitate a lot of right-of-way acquisition. Well, that's not true. In general, these improvements can be made within the existing footprint by cutting into the existing embankment or side slopes of I-94, as you can see on the screen. Really, where the right-of-way impacts occurred with the 2005 design were the construction of the continuous service drives on both sides of I-94 from I-96 to Connor Avenue. So towards the 2017 proposed modifications where we're at today, really the improvements on I-94 are to remain the same. There's still an issue with congestion and safety, so the additional lane and widened shoulders are still planned to be provided with those improvements. The change or the proposed modifications with the corridor is really to the local system. The idea of the continuous service drives is being further evaluated. We're looking at that in a little bit more detail. So the idea of continuous service drives is moved towards let's utilize the existing network that we have today. There are existing service drives there. How can we reallocate that space to improve neighborhood connectivity? So we're proposing to convert those existing one-way service drives to 2-way local streets with bicycle and pedestrian facilities to improve neighborhood connectivity. We are looking at making some additional connections where they are feasible, but really looking to minimize and avoid some of the impacts that were occurring before with the continuous service drives. So looking at the existing corridor today, again, there are existing service drives at select locations, as you can see on the map. This is a map of the entire corridor. You'll see some green lines running adjacent to the freeway. Those lines represent areas where there are existing service drives, and I'll highlight those lines there for you. But there are areas where those connections don't exist today. So there are a number of gaps in the existing service drive, and that's where really the 2005 design was developed to provide those continuous service drives and improve that connectivity with the existing service drives. So looking at the 2005 design, again, continuous service drives were proposed between I-96 on the west to Connor Avenue on the east, also along M10 and I-75 within the project limits, as you can see in the green lines on the screen. Those continuous service drives were proposed to be 2 lanes with shoulders, so very wide footprints, those areas that didn't have them previously. The 2005 design also proposed to remove 13 bridges along the corridor. They were a combination of pedestrian and vehicular bridges and road structures. And these were proposed to be removed for a number of factors, one being incompatibility with the continuous service drives, as well as some other geometric improvements that were proposed. So based on previous design, we heard a lot of feedback. And again, just to summarize in 4 bullet points, the key pieces where there's concern regarding the continuous service drives impacts to adjacent properties, not only residential businesses, but some historical resources as well. With the bridge removals, we wanted to take another look at that and provide additional connectivity across I-94 to really connect the communities and neighborhoods across the freeways. Provide better facilities for pedestrians and bicycles, so evaluate those connections we're making across I-94 and how we can better accommodate the non-motorized users, and then really reduce overall impacts from the previous proposed design. So moving forward to the proposed modifications, just to give an overview of the map you see on the screen, there's a number of colors. Those blue lines crossing the freeways are existing bridge connections that are proposed to be retained. There are some red lines which represent bridge removals, and a series of yellow lines crossing the freeway, and those are proposed new connections. In addition, where there were existing service drives run adjacent to the freeway, there are some locations that have yellow. Those areas that we're proposing to convert those existing service drives from one-way to two-way. These are maps that we presented, similar maps at the public meetings in fall 2017. I wanted to go over that for you guys again. So regarding the bridge connections, we wanted to provide additional connectivity across I-94, so we went back and looked at the design again based on the feedback we've heard since the 2017 public meetings, and we were able to provide 6 additional connections from the previously proposed. Those along M10 are Selden and Canfield. These 2 connections we received a lot of feedback on from the public as being very important to the local communities on either side of M10. So we're able to provide those connections with the proposed modifications. Along I-94 in the Midtown area and 75, the John R. Bobian and Ferry bridge connections were also identified as being very important, and McClellan as well on the east side. Another thing I wanted to note in a second, but the Cadillac BWIC, before we get there is, again, I mentioned it earlier, is converting existing one-way service drives to two-way local streets. So utilizing the existing network that we have out there versus constructing the continuous service drives throughout to reduce impacts and utilize what we already have. Again, on the screen we have, proposing to convert one-way service drives from one-way to two-way. What we're showing here is just an option. This is one item we want to get a little bit additional feedback on as we continue our stakeholder outreach. But as you see here, we're really repurposing that 30-foot cross-section of those service drives to be more lower speed local streets and accommodating bicycles and pedestrians. So there are additional options, whether they're on-street bike accommodations or providing some sort of off-use path or buffered bike lanes. We still want to get some feedback on that local service drive conversion option. And then again, going back to BWIC discussion. In 2016 public meetings in November, we had shown Cadillac as being removed, so I wanted to highlight that shown as an existing connection to be retained in our current design. We did hear a lot of feedback regarding the importance of Cadillac, so we have designed the plan to include Cadillac connection, and then we want to get feedback on the BWIC. BWIC is out there today. We want to get feedback if that is desired to be included with the proposed improvements. So I want to highlight, just display what the difference in impacts are between the previous proposed continuous service drives and where we're at now with the proposed modifications. So what you see on the screen is the 2005 design in the Midtown area. So we're at M10 and 94, near 2nd and Cass. When constructing the continuous service drives, you can see highlighted in red, resulting in quite a bit of impacts. That red is a number of residential business properties along 94, and then as we get up on M10, there's a school right at Holden Street that would have been impacted with the construction of the continuous service drives. As forward to the proposed modifications, in the screen again, we want to leverage the existing network that's out there today, make connections where they make sense. So at Holden Avenue, it's not an existing roadway connection, but providing that connection here to really help the circulation and local connectivity between the neighborhoods. And by doing this and not constructing the continuous service drives, we really reduce the amount of impacts before, as you can see on the screen here. And of providing additional connectivity, one of the things we heard from stakeholders, there are a number of existing pedestrian bridges throughout the corridor. Some were that these are not very inviting to pedestrians. They seem very caged in. And with the proposed 2005 design, we really had to bring those up to current design standards, which resulted in construction of long ramps to access that, and we'll show you some pictures of what that looks like. But they have to be very high over the freeway, so it's not a street level crossing. With that said, that's where we moved into the complete streets concept. And what a complete streets bridge is a bridge that accommodates not only vehicles but really focuses on the non-motorized elements. So providing wider sidewalks, bike lanes, and but also accommodating vehicles, but designing the roadway to be more lower speed facility. So based on we are proposing to convert the existing pedestrian bridges along the corridor to the complete streets concept. Along M10, there's 4 locations at Selden, Canfield, Merrick, and Holden, and then I-94 on the east side at Helen, Townsend, Sell, Ron's, and Springfield. Looking at what those look like, on the screen is a 2005 design of the pedestrian structure. You can see long ramps that had to be constructed, and those ramps are there to meet ADA standards and accommodate disabled users, so for those folks to be able to access across the freeway. They're very impactful to the adjacent properties along the corridor. As you can see on the screen, and in some cases lower right, impact residential houses. So very impactful. They're very in the air. The previous design proposed spanning the service drives to that conflict with pedestrians and vehicles. So they turn out to be very high over the freeway. It's not a quick way to get across the freeway. Moving towards the proposed modifications, this is an example of a complete streets crossing. As you can see, it's a street level crossing, and we avoid those impacts to the adjacent properties that we saw before with the pedestrian structures. Much improved from the previous design, and again, it's very open, as you can see on the screen. Wider sidewalks, bike lanes, lower speed roadway facility, very inviting and quick way to get across the freeway. Some other feedback we heard, there were 3 connections across I-94 that were identified as being the most important along the corridor. Those three connections were 2nd Avenue, Cass Avenue, and Connor. These were identified as community connector bridges, and these bridges are being designed to be a little bit more advanced bridges themselves. They're wider, they have a little bit more aesthetics, higher level non-motorized facilities. So in this picture you see at 2nd Avenue, you have the buffered bike lane, wider sidewalks, planters on the structure itself. And here's a street level view as you approach the community connector bridges. And these were really designed to be able to cross the freeway without knowing you're crossing the freeway. So that's where the wider design comes through, the higher, more advanced aesthetics as well. Moving to the next location, Cass Avenue, again, similar type design with the more landscaping, wider sidewalks, and bicycle lanes. The third, and again, here's the street level view. You can see how wide the structure is, and you almost don't even know you're crossing the freeway. The third location is Connor Avenue. And this location is very important for the community. At Connor Avenue, there's a statewide trail known as Iron Bell Trail, Connor Creek Greenway. This interchange itself was redesigned, and this is where the community connector bridge is really the non-motorized bridge. The pedestrians and bicycles were pulled away from Connor Avenue to be put on their own structure. You can see that it's going to be a wider structure. We're still, since the artist rendering, we're still looking to get feedback on this location, but right now, again, it's going to be a wider structure, have some aesthetic treatments, landscaping. Some concepts we're looking at now is having separate pathways for bicycles and pedestrians, so separating out those two non-motorized users, or having a two-way facility. So this is one that we're still looking at getting some feedback on, but it was identified as a community connector bridge, being important to the local community. With that, moving towards interchange modernizations, as we mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, there are a lot of outdated interchanges throughout the corridor. Some have left-handed entrances and exit ramps. We're looking to lengthen those ramps as well to provide better merging for vehicles getting on and off the freeway. At some locations, increasing capacity of those facilities where necessary. There are a couple of interchange reconfigurations along the corridor, particularly at I-94 M10, GRATIOT Avenue, and Connor Avenue, and we'll take a look at what those reconfigurations look like. One of the biggest changes is going to occur at the I-94 M10 interchange. As you are aware, today we have left-handed entrances and exit ramps at the interchange. And these locations too, not only are they left-handed exit ramps, but they also have right-handed exit ramps right at the same location. So it creates some safety and operational issues. We're going to look to modernize that with the proposed improvements. Key thing to note as we move towards the proposed design, M10 today, as you are aware, bridges over I-94. North and south of I-94 today, there are two key connections, or pedestrian connections, at Merrick and Holden. And about those being converted from a pedestrian bridge to a complete streets bridge. But want to note that we move towards the proposed design as we maintain those. So looking at the proposed M10 interchange, modernize those left-hand ramps, move those to the right-handed side, so you'll exit from both freeways from the right, which is a big change, but matches minor changes today. So that will vastly improve safety and operations of the interchange itself. And the other key thing that's going to be occurring is we redesigned I-94 and M10 so that M10 goes under I-94. So we flip-flop 94 and M10 as it exists today, And the purpose of that is we want to get the street level crossings at Holden and M10. So in order to get the clearance under those bridges and allow those bridges to cross at street level from the adjacent neighborhoods, we need to lower M10. And in order to do that, I had to put M10 under I-94. M10 will be at about the same elevation as I-94 is today, so it won't be much lower than the existing freeway. It just changes the configuration of the interchange itself. Other important movements that we heard from stakeholders in the New Center and Midtown area was maintaining that northbound M10 exits to Milwaukee West Grand Boulevard. So this exit ramp will be maintained for northbound M10 traffic. You see that with the black arrow on the screen. The exit will be provided as you approach the interchange. You'll exit to the right, and you'll be able to access Milwaukee West Grand Boulevard. Taking a look at the Holden Street connection, this is a picture of the existing connection today. It's an existing pedestrian bridge. And we want to look to make this a complete streets bridge. And you can see today on the screen that the 10 elevation is right about the elevation of Holden Street, so that's where we had to lower it. Looking at the proposed design, this is the proposed Holden Complete Streets connection. We have the white building in the lower right screen. This is the school that's there today. We're able to provide this connection without impacting that building or the school. Look at the proposed roadway of Holden. Again, it's proposed to be a complete streets bridge, so you can see the lower left corner of your screen. One lane in each direction, buffered bike lanes and sidewalks. Again, this is just a concept. How we will look to get more feedback and additional detail for this crossing as we move forward and finalize the design moving forward. Look at the reconfiguration of the Connor Avenue. As those of you who have used the Connor Avenue interchange, very confusing, expansive interchange. Ramps come in on the left-hand side of Connor. It splits off to one-way streets, north and south, along Connor Avenue, so very confusing. We're looking to upgrade this to a standard interchange design, which is what we call a standard diamond interchange. The entrance and exit ramps will tee directly into Connor. You'll come up with a traffic signal. You'll make a left or right-hand turn like a standard intersection. So it really helps with driver expectation, eliminates a lot of the confusion with the existing Connor Avenue interchange. And as you can see in the rendering, we have the shared use path bridge located east or west of Connor. So we pulled away the bike and pedestrian movements away from Connor. That's going to continue to be refined as we move forward with the details of that, a non-motorized bridge. The last interchange reconfiguration is at GRATIOT Avenue. As you're aware today, we have these tight loop ramps, and really these are prime examples of on and off ramps that don't provide adequate merging distance for folks entering and exiting the freeway. So moving forward with the proposed modifications, we're looking to remove those existing loop ramps. And again, similar concept to the Connor Avenue interchanges, provide standard diamond interchange. So ramps will, and you'll tee directly into GRATIOT Avenue at a traffic signal. And one of the changes here is you'll be able to turn left and right as you exit to GRATIOT. Today, those movements are restricted. You'd only turn as you exit to GRATIOT. So that's an improvement for the GRATIOT change. And as we move forward, we'll hope to get some better graphics of this for future meetings to better convey this concept. So the main big changes with the corridor from existing to proposed are how we access I-94 and M10. So we'll go through this and what those changes are. And looking at this graphic, just to give you an overview of what we're looking at, You should be focusing on the dark gray arrows on the screen. These arrows represent locations where there are existing on and off ramps. There are a couple of red arrows on the screen. Those represent ramps that are proposed to be removed. And this is 2005 design that we're looking at on the screen. Start on the west side of the project. The first change is, say there's an existing on-ramp as you pass under the railroad structure on the west side of the project on the freeway. The ramp is proposed to be removed, and the reason for this removal is really the ramps at Linwood and Trumbull. When we upgrade those ramps, lengthen out those ramps to provide more moving distance for those vehicles, this at 14th Street is no longer feasible. However, I mentioned access to and from 94 provided nearby at Trumbull and Linwood. Next location, along M10 today, the existing on and off ramps occur at Forest Avenue. It's a standard urban diamond interchange there. So you enter and exit at Forest Avenue. There's a little bit of a change with the 2005 design. It proposed moving the ramps, specifically the northbound ramp. So this that's there today, it's moved just south of Forest Avenue. And again, the reason for that is we lengthen these ramps here at the interchange, we need a little bit more space, so that's why it was moved a little bit south of Forest to access that. The other ramp, which was the exit ramp from M10 to Forest, that had been relocated up before Warren in the 2005 design. And again, that's when new ramps come on, we pull that ramp off prior to the new interchange ramps at 94 and M10. Information to show where those ramps are moving. And the next change, a minor change, and then a 2005 design. Today, I-94 in Midtown, the entrance and exit ramps to westbound 94 occur at John R. Street. They're being shifted a little bit to the east over to Brush. Again, the reason for that is giving us a little bit more space between the interchange ramps at the M10 interchange to the west. So really maximizing that space between those ramps is the reason those have been shifted to the east. Today, as you are aware, is a one-way roadway that will propose to be converted to two-way along with a couple other local streets in the area to improve traffic flow and access to those ramps. Along I-95, the 2005 design, the southbound exit to Warren Avenue was proposed to be removed. We'll talk about that with when we move forward to the modifications. Moving east, there was an additional exit ramp added at Sheen Street. This is really to help the traffic operations in the GM area. There's a lot of truck traffic with GM operations, and this was added there to alleviate some of those issues. Moving towards the east, French Road. Today there's existing on and off ramps at French Road that access westbound 94. Those are proposed to be removed in the 2005 design, again, due to the modernization of the GRATIOT Avenue ramps and the Connor Avenue ramps. In order to get those lengthened ramps at those locations, that's at French Road, became no longer feasible. Access, again, is provided at the adjacent interchanges. Moving to 2017 proposed modifications, and I'm going to highlight here is really the changes from the 2005 design. So everything that was discussed previously applies unless I commented on it here. So along M10, in order to provide the ramp or the new connections at Canfield Street, that new street level complete streets bridge at Canfield, the entrance ramp to M10 is no longer feasible. We're still looking at this, but at this time, that's proposed to be removed. However, access is provided. We provided a connection, service drive connection through the interchange, so folks looking to enter northbound M10 can take the service drive north through the M10-94 interchange and access northbound M10 at West Grand Boulevard. Access is also provided immediately to the south of the Grand River interchange. The southbound M10 exit ramp to Warren in the 2005 design also becomes no longer feasible. Really, and this one is because of the reconfiguration of I-94 and M10. When we put M10 under I-94, the ramp no longer becomes feasible to exit at Warren Avenue. And we also heard some concerns regarding this ramp from the stakeholder feedback since the 2016 public meetings. Really because that location is where the Wayne State University athletic fields are. There's a lot of non-motorized pedestrians in that location, so there were some concern regarding the location of that ramp. At this time, it's proposed to be removed. Again, we want to get feedback on these ramp removals as we move forward. We'll look to see if there's additional modifications we can make to help access along 10. And again, with the removal of that southbound 10 exit ramp to Warren, access is provided at West Grand Boulevard to the north and at Grand River to the south. Another area or ramp that we heard a lot of feedback from stakeholders was the southbound 75 ramp to Warren. This is a very important connection for the Midtown area stakeholders. So we went back, looked at the removal of this ramp, and we redid it and we're able to maintain this access point. So currently this is proposed to be carried forward as provided in the proposed modifications. So we just went over a lot of changes that are proposed to be made to the 2005 design. For those of you that attended the last LAC GAC meeting, we went over this in same slides as before, but to capture those changes, we're looking to update the previous proposed design and environmental reports. This will be done in a supplemental environmental impact statement. So we'll document the changes that are proposed to the design. With that comes changes to the impacts. So all the traffic noise, air quality, impacts to other environmental resources, so stormwater, drainage, the social economic side as well. We'll be documenting the changes and impacts to that. Also, since the 2005 design, there's been a lot of changes in the city of Detroit, and really the purpose is to update that document to capture all of those changes that are going on. This will be done over a 2-year time frame. There'll be multiple opportunities for public to comment on the documentation of the impacts and the proposed modifications. So now, as you see, there's a red triangle. We are here, so we're before the point at which we start to document those changes. And we'll talk about next steps, but over the next couple months, we're really looking to finalize those proposed modifications and get a recommended set of modifications to carry forward into the environmental documentation phase and updating the environmental document itself. There'll be a draft environmental document that'll have a public hearing and a 45-day comment period for stakeholders to comment on and public to comment on. And then there, we'll address the comments received towards the final supplemental environmental impact statement. And again, there'll be another opportunity for folks to comment that and the record of decision, which is anticipated at the end of 2019, early 2020. Next steps. A I-94 newsletter will be distributed tomorrow. Some additional information that's been going on to date. So you should be getting that shortly. That will be going out to all of the LAC GAC members as well as general public as well. We'll bring a series of resident roundtable discussions throughout the corridor. We have some confirmed already. District 6 residents and businesses on the September 26th, District 4 September 28th, District 3 on October 18th. So that hits some of the east side residents and businesses, as well as the west side residents and businesses as well. I want to get more feedback on where we're at with the proposed modifications, so we can look to finalize those this fall and into early next year. We also have an LAC GAC bus tour lined up for a group of folks. So we're going out to the field and reviewing the 94 corridor in a little bit more detail. So we'll have another opportunity to ask questions about the project and get a little bit more additional feedback from this group on where we're at now and how we can move forward. Like I mentioned, other activities going on this fall. We have these meetings confirmed. We'll be looking to do some additional stakeholder outreach and meetings as well, and to really identify the recommended preferred set of modifications that we can advance and document in the supplemental EIS. We identify the recommended set of modifications. We'll talk to our LAC GAC members to have a meeting to present that, and then eventually into a public meeting early next year. So that said, we'll move into the Q&A session. Looks like we got a couple of questions that came through. And again, if you would like to ask some questions, please do so via the chat function. If it's not showing up on your screen, there should be an icon in your upper right corner. You can click chat, the chat box. It should highlight in blue, and it should bring up a chat box in the lower right corner, and you can submit your questions there. So with that said, there are a couple of questions on the screen. First one being, can you show the proposed local connections again? So I can bring that up. And it's potential I got that number wrong. I believe it's this slide that I was referring to. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So McClellan, 6. 6 local connections that were being added back. Well, really 4 that are being added back from the approved 2005 design, and then 2 new connections at Selden and Field. If that answered the question. The next question would be, is the John R. Bridge still being removed with the new design? And this is addressed on this screen. The proposed modifications show John R. and Bobian go back. So those will be redid and replaced. So will not be removed with the proposed improvements. Again, I touch on the other ones. Ferry Street was another connection that was proposed to be removed previously and is going to be reinstated along with McClellan. I hope that question. Next question, can we download the presentation or is it being recorded? The answer is yes, the presentation is being recorded. Anticipate posting our link to the presentation, whether it's to YouTube or posting the presentation itself on the I-94 project website for folks to download or access at a later point in time. Another question. Some new complete streets bridges look like they have buffers for the bike lanes. Are these buffers with protected physical barriers? Will this be consistent throughout the complete streets bridges? So right now we have a proposed concept for the complete streets bridges, really to provide enhanced positions for non-motorized users. I think that's feedback we want to get from stakeholders, and it might be a case-by-case basis for some of these bridges. We really want, and one of the things we are doing too is reviewing the non-motorized plan, make sure that these bridges are set up to accommodate the future plan for some of these local routes may consist of protected bike lanes or some variation of the bike lane treatment. So what we have is a concept at this time. I think we're going to be looking to get additional detail as we move forward and finalize these complete streets bridges. But really, purpose in a big picture at this time, we want to identify just the complete streets concept, and we'll get those further details as we move forward. Hopefully I answered that question. For access to Midtown for travelers heading south on M10 and I-75, where people go if the exits are being eliminated. So the current proposed modifications, the northbound entrance and exit ramp, and we can zoom in on this map here, at Forest Avenue are proposed to be removed. Current configuration, the way that folks can access the area is they can exit south on M10 at West Grand Boulevard, and I'll highlight that here. There's existing exit ramp here, so access up the new area there, or ran over to the south, which is just south of the map picture here. That was the way that they would access that in the current configuration. It is a rather large change, and we'll get some feedback from stakeholders regarding that. This is a thing we're looking at a little bit more detail. It gets a little bit more complicated when we provide the street level crossings at Canfield, and with the modernization of the 94 M10 interchange, our space is really constricted, providing ramps that meet current design standards and provide adequate space for folks to enter and exit. Something we'll be looking at moving forward, but want to get feedback. So the answer to that question would be access is provided at West Grand Boulevard and Grand River. Next question, can the bridges be designed so bike lanes or protected be added at a later date? That's a good question. So I would imagine what you're getting with that question is if we just provide wider vehicular lanes that could accommodate a bike lane added in the future. That's an interesting question. I think we, as we move forward, we're reviewing again the non-motorized plan, make sure we're compliant with the proposed for the local network. I think that will help alleviate some of the issues of whether a bike lane will or be added in the future to those local routes. But that's something that I think we'll look at a case-by-case basis, bridge by bridge. We want to get feedback at those locations regarding those elements. Again, complete streets bridges are going to be designed to accommodate bus and pedestrians. This is other bridges along the corridor of the existing roadway bridges to be retained. We're looking at those designs as they're advanced towards construction. Similar, if you all remember at the 2016 public meetings, we had the proposed routes for the advanced bridges. As those were being designed last year, we were looking at getting feedback on the non-motorized elements, and those bridges, the cross-section of those bridges varied throughout. It was really based on what the non-motorized plans are and what the future plans are for bicycle and pedestrian lanes for the local routes. We did get feedback from stakeholders on that, so those were refined. Make sure we're accommodating all users. I hopefully answered that question. That was a little long-winded. Moving on to the next question. There appears to be local connector at 94 into Quinder under 94. What concept for this improvement? Does it relate to crossings at 75? I'm referring to Russell or St. Aubin. I guess I'll start with St. Aubin. St. Aubin corridor passes under I-94. This has been identified as a very important crossing for non-motorized users. It's part of the Interbelt Greenway, which is a non-motorized facility, so bicycle and pedestrians, it's a regional or citywide trail that's proposed. That's one location we are looking at in a little bit more detail. It's been identified as being very important to and I'll put it on the screen. So this is the St. Aubin crossing. You see that in the purple dots, it's identified a existing bike route. It's identified again as the Interbelt Greenway in the future plan. So it's going to be a little bit more enhanced motorized route. It's been identified as being very important to the city. We're going to be working closely with them as well as other stakeholders, non-motorized stakeholders, to really ensure that accommodate what is planned for that corridor in the future. So details for that will get worked out as we move forward, but again, we want to get additional feedback for that as we move forward. Next question, is there opportunities to manage stormwater runoff with infrastructure? This is a great question. We've heard a lot of feedback regarding implementation of stormwater features and green infrastructure along the project. That's one we are reviewing now. And can we pull up the stormwater? Yeah, we'll pull up an exhibit for you all to see, but that's one exercise we're going through now and we're going to be going through as we move forward. But some key things to note, when 94 is a part of the modernization of 94 is we're going to be upgrading the drainage system along 94 to current design standards. It was designed back in the late 40s and 1950s. Things have changed over time. Requirements for drainage have become a little bit more stringent. So those will be upgraded along the corridor. We'll also be looking to implement some stormwater features and green infrastructure. We're working with some local partners as well. We've already got inquiries from a few folks, Chandler Park, Recovery Park as well, and some others. And again, there'll be some areas within some of these interchanges that have some green space. How can we best utilize that green space to implement some stormwater features? So that's one thing we'll be looking at as well. I'll bring one of those exhibits up so you can see some concepts that we're reviewing right now. Again, this is at the plan stage. I saw privilege over to one of our designers, Ed, to bring up the control level stormwater green infrastructure exhibit so you all can take a peek at that and get an idea of what we're looking at. So a very cartoony, can you hit Control L? This is a little cartoony exhibit, but you can see within the existing right-of-way, we're to implement some stormwater features. You see on the screen some green, some blue. Blue represents some areas where we're looking at some stormwater retention or detention features. So again, there's some space that's available within the existing right-of-way after we complete the proposed improvements that be allocated to stormwater features. The exhibit highlights that for you. The other part, I guess, important thing to note, there will be a corridor-wide, we developed corridor-wide landscaping plan as well, so there'll be some landscaping to go along with the stormwater elements as well. Hopefully answered that question. There are opportunities for stormwater management. I'm going to take back over preserve privileges. Did I answer the St. Aubin question? I see a couple here on the questions. about the same corridor? Oh, you're talking about the bridge. Maybe this is what you all are referring to as that white bridge there. That's an existing railroad line. So the DeQuinter Bridge obviously bridges over that. That was put to exhibit to really just highlight that that's a railroad crossing. That's one thing I didn't highlight when I gave an overview of the map, but you can see up along 95, the railroad bridges are noted in white. That's just to note the railroad crossing there. I know the city has potential plans for that corridor. That's something we're still looking to get additional detail on and what those are. Those for that corridor again, road corridor would be a city-led project, not associated with this one. But we are working closely with them as it relates to the Interbelt Greenway. A little bit back, so I'm going to folks here. Okay, next question. Right now it looks like there's a southbound exit on I-75 at Ferry or Kirby. What is that arrow? So the arrow is the one, its approximate current location as it exists today. That exit's really for Warren Avenue. So exits southbound 75, and it exits directly to the frontage road. It's signed for Warren Avenue, but that is pretty much just how it looks today, and it's proposed to be reinstated with the proposed modifications. Any other questions? It does stay. That is correct. So exit from 75 to Warren is proposed to remain in place with the proposed improvements. If no other questions, wrap it up. I want to thank everybody for joining today's webinar. Again, we did record this session, so we'll get this up on the website. Likely shoot out an email to notify you guys that it's posted and ready for viewing. And we'll look to put that on the project website soon. If you guys have any other questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to Nate or anyone on the project team, and we can address any of their concerns. We thank you all for presenting or for attending today, and we'll look forward to seeing you all on the bus tour in early October. Thanks.
Yeah.